I call Shane Arden.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's a pleasure to rise and speak in the first reading of the Animal Welfare Amendment Bill and look forward to the submissions that will come to the Primary Production Select Committee on this matter. Mr Speaker, other speakers have touched on it, and certainly the Minister covered it. The need for New Zealand to be absolutely transparent and better than most, ahead of the pack, if you like, internationally in animal welfare issues is without debate, without any dissension, I would suggest, because we are so dependent on our animal production systems for our export earnings and the standard of living that we enjoy in New Zealand. But there are a few issues, I guess, that need to be teased out in this discussion, and that is just how will this Act work? And of course what the Act does, or the bill as it stands at the moment, the amendment, the proposed amendment, it allows for a regulatory authority, for a code, if you like, what has formerly been known as NAWAC, the National Animal Welfare Committee, to take all things into consideration when they make their decisions. And this brings a higher degree of transparency and enforceability to the work that they do, and that's a good thing. It has been required for some time. Could I also touch briefly, Mr Speaker, in the few moments that I have, on the issue that has so passionately been spoken about by the Honourable John Banks and the Honourable Trevor Mallard, and that is the psychoactive substances animal testing. The dilemma, as a member of the Health Select Committee as well as the Primary Production Select Committee, the dilemma that committee faced was, do you set a separate and different standard for testing of drugs, for psychoactive drugs, than what you would for drugs in general? And the answer from the member is yes, and if that is the will of the Parliament, well, so be it. But effectively in that debate, we were looking at is whether or not there should be a full ban or a prohibition, if you like, on these drugs full stop. And I think the Parliament overwhelmingly conceded that prohibitions don't work. And the member himself, the Honourable Trevor Mallard, spoke passionately about a relative who ran a club distributing alcohol in the King Country during the time that there was a prohibition in the King Country. So prohibitions generally don't work. So what's the next best option? And the next best option is harm minimisation. And so then the dilemma is, do you have the same standard of test for psychoactive drugs for harm minimisation as what you would have for any other type of drug that you might, through medical application, use? And the members have said yes, so that's fine. If the Parliament decides that's where it should be and that is the overwhelming majority of the consensus, well, so be it. I have no strong view on that one way or another. I will ask the question, of course, though, do you believe it's better to test these drugs on our young New Zealand people than it is to have these things tested on animals? And that is a debate for people to have, and people have a view on it. I guess the next real issue is the definition of animal welfare, because you see, everyone has a view on that. And sometimes when I've been in the cities, you know, and I see this well-loved German Shepherd cooped up in an apartment, overweight, because the owners are loving the animal to death, I actually see that as an animal welfare issue. I do, and I see it quite regularly. Cats, dogs, other loved pets, overfed, under-exercised, cooped up for long hours because the owners are away at work. That's an animal welfare issue. Probably the issue that really I want to touch on, though, Mr Speaker, in closing, is this. During the flooding in the Whakatane area, there was a major animal welfare issue up there. A major animal welfare issue. There were farms that completely went underwater, houses, cow sheds, everything went underwater. And I was invited up there as a part of the Ag team in the National Caucus at that time. And SPCA, an organisation I have a lot of respect for, drove out from Tauranga, where they could have been helping people move these animals and carrying out useful work, but instead of that, they served notice on some of those farmers because their cows had been standing in a cow yard or somewhere high above the water, and the only way they could keep them alive was to do that, and they weren't able to transport them there and then because the Ministry of Transport had shut down the drivers of the trucks that had come from other parts of the country to ship them away. Yeah, yes. Yeah, that, Trevor, that is what happened.
Order.
And that, and first of all, that is
Mr. Mallard.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
That's right. Well done, Mr. Ardern.
Yes. So that's what happened, and so in my view, they were creating an animal welfare issue by being bureaucratic and less than supportive of those people that were depressed and distressed at the time, and some animals that were as well. So, Mr. Speaker, this was going to be an interesting debate, obviously, going forward, on who says what about what is animal welfare and determining what it actually means, and just how we can, through a committee, aided and abetted by good, solid legislation, decide that and the outcomes of it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I look forward to the passage of the bill.
I call the honourable member Richard Price.